Welcome,
Welcome, everybody. Yeah.
everybody. Welcome, welcome. We'll give you a few seconds here to roll in. We have a lot of registrants for today for our super sexy topic, talking about loans and paying the bill.
Funnest part of college, everybody's favorite. Yeah. Good afternoon. Good morning out there on the and wherever you are. Yeah, where are you? Tell us in the chat. Where are you? I'm just north of Boston in Salem, Mass. Here we got Peggy, just outside of Seattle on the West Coast. Where do we find you all?
Yeah, let us know where you're.
We're usually very well represented geographically. Here we go.
There's a Seattle. We got
Seattle,
West Coast, East Coast, Texas. Yep.
Swampscott, right down the street here. South Shore.
Kentucky. Love it.
Yeah. Um, Okay, awesome. We'll do some this there's a fair amount to cover here today, right? First, we want to talk about, okay, if we have any resources, how do we actually pay this bill? What are some things that we can do to think about minimizing the amount we have to borrow? And then for a percentage of us, we are where we are, right? We got to borrow X amount. How do we do that the right way? Something that we're pretty proud of here is there's no fun way to borrow $40,000 or whatever the number is, right? But the vast majority of folks that that are doing this right now and have done this historically, they're throwing darts blindly and hoping that they're choosing or landing on the solution that's best for their family. I'm incredibly confident that we're going to be able to help you understand the pros and cons of all your options and ultimately allow you guys to decide what's the best fit for our family. Because the reason why we have to provide so much education specifically for this topic, there are no universal answers, right? If we meet with a handful of families each day, and we do this time of year, there's going to be a handful of different recommendations based on where they're at, their preferences, et cetera. So that's where we're going to help you get to. Quickly, for those of you that are new, my name is Matt Carpenter. I'm one of the founders at College Aid Pro. Like I said, just outside of Boston here. And again, this isn't the sexiest, funnest thing to talk about, but it's just really important because there can be a huge swing on ultimately what you end up paying for college based on the decisions we're making at this juncture. So I promise you're in good hands. This is the fairy godmother of financial aid, Peg Keogh. Peggy and I were lucky enough to just be together. We're just talking about that. We were at a conference for school counselors in Kansas City in the middle of the country, but yeah, Peggy misses me already. Sorry, Peggy.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and my background is actually in financial planning. So, I mean, this piece, I know you're at the home stretch here. You've been on this journey with your child, but this is the place where you want to still stay heads down here because just like we preach when you were building that college list to cast a wide net, so that when acceptances come in and award letters, you've got some leverage and you understand what your options are. It's the same thing if you happen to need loans. You want to cast a wider net, not just focus on one piece. And as Matt said, just like everything in this process, it's very specific to your family, and that's going to make a lot more sense by the end of the webinar because we really are going to go into detail on the different types of loans, and it's going to resonate for you. Oh, that's the kind of family we are, so we might want to focus on this or this, but definitely that theme of casting a wide net. So, and actually my best credential is I have twins and I've been through this. I've sat where you've sat. Matt's got a young one. He isn't there yet. He's in his saving mode, but I've been there. And believe me, you will be waving goodbye at that dorm before you know it. You've got this summer, so this is just your last piece. So we're super happy to be here to be a part of guiding you through this piece. And so for our, as we affectionately call groupies, you know this, but we are College Aid Pro. I'm the director of education. Matt said he's one of the co-founders, as he shared. And this truly is our mission, to end the student debt crisis by empowering you to shop smarter for college. And you've already done a lot of the shopping, but this is a very vital part of it, as Matt shared. So we are on this whole journey with you, and this piece is not going to be left behind by any means. So
And
let's
just,
jump.
and Peg, let me just layer on there quickly, because obviously our big hope and intention, and in terms of how do we end the student debt crisis, a lot of that happens at the front part of this process, right? In terms of shopping smarter for college, but it's the same theme right now. Just like for those of you that have followed us, these colleges are big businesses that we leverage against one another. We're going to learn over this next hour here, the same exact thing happens in the lending space, right? And that's what we're going to talk about. So we're still, even though we know where we're going to college and we know what it costs, when we say shop smarter for college, we're still in that phase right now. And sorry,
Yeah,
Peg,
yeah. For people
did
that
you
have
hit?
gone through our appeal piece with us, it's analogous to that. Now it's just with the lenders versus the colleges,
That's right.
basically. So, okay. So here we go. There we are, the happy couple. So let's talk about the timeline. We are in this timeline. We've done a bunch of these webinars, and we're going to continue to do them because we're trying to meet you where you are. But it is, as Matt always says, if you're a sports person, it's game time, right? This is when you're going to be wanting to do this. You are not early. Some of you might already have seen bills for your kids, especially if it's a semester school. If you haven't seen bills, they're going to start hitting up in your child's portal, financial portal, that part of the portal pretty soon. Okay. And then, schools are semesters or quarters. So the timeline is a little different, even between semester schools and quarter schools, when things are going to be due and when things hit up. It's all new to you now with your upcoming freshmen in college, but you'll get it down pretty quickly of where it fit, how that school functions. But then you're going to have the same thing come up for the second semester or when that other quarter comes up. So just keep that in mind. Most loan applications can be done pretty quickly. We're going to touch on each type of loan in some detail in a few minutes. So one of them, it's pretty immediate, the Federal Plus loan, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. So again, we are game time. There are payment plans, and that is even with loans, that is hugely helpful for a lot of families. And I'm going to get into a little bit more detail on payment plans in a minute, in a couple slides, because almost pretty much every school offers them, but sometimes you might not see it and you might not know to ask about it. So now you will. So, and this is the part that I like, being a financial planner by background. It's always good to take an assessment in your household and read between the two spouses of kind of how you're spending your money. I would love it if everybody had a financial plan. So you're kind of looking at how much is left every month, what are you saving? But it's huge right now, right? Because like this slide says, if you can find $100 a month, that could be much less that you're borrowing. You're still going to need to borrow, and that's fine. Borrow responsibly, but it can really, really help. So we talk about this hit the reset button, time to kind of think about your financial life. What are you spending money on? Everybody's got stuff that they're not using potentially. Maybe you're TV watching. Maybe you've got stuff that you're not really using. And like I always buy Peacock to watch Notre Dame football games. If I keep paying for that and it's not football season, I'm wasting my money. Cancel it, right? That's where we're going for. And it might be like, well, what's the deal, Peg? 10, 15 bucks here or there. But it can really add up, like the other slide said. So it's actually a good thing to do in general, but then it's very advantageous when you're in this figuring out loans and how much money you could potentially put toward paying for college. There might be more than you think. And so it'll be good for your family in general to do that, but really good for college in the step of the journey you're on. So let's talk about these payment plans that I just referenced. Every school will offer them. Most of the time, they have a little paragraph on that financial aid award letter that your child got from the schools they were accepted to that said, this is what we're giving you, merit and grants and loans, et cetera. They use third-party institutions, depending on if they're semesters or quarters, just like everything in this process. might be a little bit different. You know, we're doing it 3 times a semester, 4 times. When you have to start paying is going to be different depending on the school. The good thing about it is it's very rare that they're charging you interest when you do it that way. You know, if you pay your car insurance instead of upfront, but you pay it monthly, you multiply that by 12, you're paying a decent amount more for your car insurance for the year. But here, the colleges, they want your money, right? They're, as Matt said earlier, they're big business, right? They're not messing around. They want your money and they want to make it easy for you to say, well, I can do that on a monthly basis or 4 times a year over the semester. There will be an enrollment fee. It's a one-time enrollment fee, but then you make your payments however it's set up. And realize too, if the delta is 15,000, you don't have to do the 15,000. You have some flexibility. And if there's ever any questions about that, and you just always reach out to the school, don't be shy about that. But realize if this can help, you should definitely use a payment plan because for a lot of families, it's hugely helpful. So let's talk about the resources that you have because we always get these questions. People are like, well, I have this, and when should I be using what assets? We can make some general, like I'll make some general statements here, but realize, like we've said already a couple times, it's specific to your family. But let's talk about the biggest pieces that most people have. And the first bullet you might not have. This isn't as common, but UGMA UTMA. If that means anything to you, it's basically a custodial account. It's used by grandparents. Used to be the only game in town years ago before 529s and Coverdales and prepayment plans came along it was actually gifting money to the beneficiary. That actually is an asset of the students, which can be very punitive when financial aid is given out. So if you're just realizing that and you need some help around that, you need to book time with us because we need to get in the weeds. You can't just knee jerk move that over somewhere else because you're liquidating stuff. It's a longer conversation. So just realize that because you don't want to do something that isn't beneficial because you didn't know all the moving pieces and tax ramifications. So just realize if you have that, that's a student asset, might be worth getting rid of that right away, but talk to us before you decide to do that so you don't realize that's going to hurt you down the road for financial aid. The next bucket, super, super common, 529s, Coverdales, like in the state of Washington where I am, we have, it's like called GET, and that's our prepaid tuition plan. Those all fall under that bucket of the college savings plan that the IRS established. So if you are the owner as the parent, which is super common, that's an asset of yours. And people always say, well, I've saved it for my child. Shouldn't I just liquidate the whole thing freshman year? I can pay for half a freshman year and half a sophomore year. If that's the case, probably not. We're going to talk about a loan. Matt's going to hit a loan in a few minutes that is use it or lose it. So you're probably going to want to you're definitely going to want to look at this over 4 years and look at the delta every year and plan it out. That's a huge takeaway today, and we can help you with that. Loans are a part of a lot of family strategy. That's okay, but you want it just like everything. You want to be smart about how you pick your loan and how you're using it year by year. So keep that in mind. But if the parent is the owner, it's an asset of the parents, which is a much lower assessment in the financial aid calculation for SAI and EFC. Also super common for grandparents to want to have skin in the game and help or even own a 529. So if that's the case, that's not even part of the equation on the FAFSA, but that's another conversation. When should you use that money? Well, it depends how much they're willing to come to the table with. So you can see that, you know, I'm talking about this high level, but it really depends on your family, how all the chips are going to fall and what the grandparents are willing to do. And honestly, that 4-year view of how it looks, a lot of grandparents love seeing that because then they can see how they can help, and we can help you do that if that's where you're sitting with help from outside. So let's get in the weeds, just high level, because I could talk about this for a while. But if you have a 529 and this is your first child going to college, you haven't tapped it yet. So I want you to understand what's going to happen here and what the rules are. With a 529, you can use it only for qualified higher education expenses, and that's defined by the IRS. But basically, it's tuition and fees, room and board, books, travel, anything that's in that cost of attendance breakdown, as well as anything that the college requires. Sometimes colleges say, hey, you've got to buy this laptop. We're going to load certain software on there. They require it. That's part of it. Big things, actually, I misspoke, not travel. It's not that piece, right? So that's the biggest one where people get stuck. It's tuition and fees, room and board, books, and anything the school requires. Travel is part of the cost of attendance, and it could be a pretty big chunk. If you're in Maine and you're sending your child to California, those flights are not part of what the IRS qualifies it for. You can use it, but you're going to pay tax on the earnings and a 10% penalty. So you probably don't want to, because that's going to sting, right? How do you get the money out of the 529? You can pay it to yourself as the owner and then pay the bill. You can have it sent directly to the college. There's no right or wrong there. It's really your preference. I paid it to myself, and then I went and paid that bill, and I knew it was done. That was just what worked for me. But if you don't want to deal with that, you can send it directly to the college. But a paper trail is really, really important. Anything with taxes, throughout your tax life, you want to have that paper trail. You want to have the proof that you spent those distributions on the tuition and fees, books, room and board, and not other things. Because throw it in that tax file. If you get audited, you're good to go. You will get a 1099-Q, like Queen, from your 529 company. And then the college also has what's called a 1098-T that details what you paid them in a given year. This is an IRS thing. So remember, it's a tax year thing. The IRS doesn't care about school years. So when you take a distribution out of that 529, make sure you're paying the school in the same tax year. So that can get a little dodgy for second semester sometimes. The IRS, that you're going to get in hot water with them if you take out money in December and then you pay a second semester bill in January of the next year. So that's a no-no. So keep that in mind. So hopefully, high level, that helps with starting to take money out. Because by the way, with 529s, if you call them and say, I've got 100,000 in there, I want all of it, they will send it to you, no questions asked. They don't have to keep the paper trail. They don't have to check you that you're doing this right. That's on you as the taxpayer. So just keep all of that in mind. There are several tax credits, but the one we want to highlight today, so we don't overwhelm you, is this American Opportunity Tax Credit. We call it AOTC for short. It is a $2,500 per year per child. So if I was eligible with my two in college when they were in college, would have been $5,000 for me. So a tax credit means if you do your tax return, you owe $20,000 in taxes for the year to the government. You get this tax credit, you now owe them $17,500 instead of $20,000. So it's lovely. It's a really nice tax credit. You see up here, just like most IRS credits, there's a phase out. So a married filing jointly, it's 160 to 180, your adjusted gross income. That's what AGI means. If you're over that, then you're not eligible. If you're in that, you're in the middle, you're not going to get 2,500. And if you're under, you get the full amount. The main takeaway here is you have to have $4,000 of tuition and fees and books expenses that you do not pull out of another tax advantaged account. 529 being the biggest one. If you have savings bonds, anywhere where you're getting a tax break, you can't take the tax break on that 4,000 and then say, hey, Uncle Sam, now I want AOTC on that money. That's called double dipping in their mind, and your accountant will say, you're stuck. You can't do that. So just keep that in mind. And you do have to claim the child to get the credit. Okay, so that's a really great tax credit. Most people learn that 4,000 rule when it's too late for the first time. So we just want to make sure you know that's available to you. All right, I'm going to kick it over to you, Matt, to get in the weeds here on the loans.
Beautiful. And yeah, keep the questions coming, everybody. We're doing the best we can to keep pace with you. We won't be able to get to all of them, but we'll talk about how we can help you beyond the hour we're going to spend today. So just really quickly, we'll talk through all of these, but I flagged at the top, right? There is no universal best solution for everybody, right? There's no such thing. Everybody's unique, and we're going to help, I hope, educate you on finding what solution is going to be best for your family. We're going to help you determine your family's criteria, because ultimately that's going to drive, what is the best fit for you all. Now, I have a feeling if I asked everybody, hey, what's your family's borrowing criteria? You've never heard that question before. You have no idea. Again, we're going to help you kind of talk that out and have that conversation with yourself so you can establish an answer to that question, which is ultimately going to point to what's going to be the right way to borrow this money, and also give you just some ground rules. Matter of fact, it'll be the next slide that you can skip to here, Peggy, in terms of like how much is too much to borrow, right? And obviously we're at the finish line here. It kind of, our situation is what it is, but we still get the question a lot in terms of like, well, how much should I borrow as parents? What should the kids own? So I think it's still helpful to have something to anchor to. And so this is what we want to highlight right here. Okay. Because in terms of how much is too much to borrow, well, the data and the math supports, at least when we're talking about students, we don't want them to borrow more than we expect them to make their first year after graduating from college. Now, obviously, who knows? People transfer, people change majors, all sorts of variables in there. But this is something that at least can give us something concrete to consider when we're figuring out a threshold here. So if we have a student, that's going to major in computer science at Carnegie Mellon, well, we're okay with them borrowing up to $76,000 over the course of 4 years, right? Now, obviously, we would hope to do less than that, but going to major, okay, in that discipline, the math still supports that we're going to have a reasonable expectation to get a return on that investment, where if we have a student that's they want to be an elementary school teacher, that's amazing. But the math doesn't support them borrowing $76,000. Their threshold is going to be closer to 40. So I think this is a little bit helpful if you're at the finish line here and you're kind of thinking about, well, how much can our kids take on versus us as parents? And obviously there's no easy answer to that question, but hopefully this is something that can help you guys at home if you're trying to figure out what's what. Go ahead, Peg, if you could. And this is just more of a table of contents. We're going to rip through all these. We're going to talk through all of your loan options. And then Peg's going to spend just a few minutes talking about quote unquote alternative loan options before we kind of come to our conclusions and wrap. So you've heard me say more than once here, there are no universal solutions or recommendations except for this one. Okay. Now, I am somebody, and I stand tall on this, that recommends that every single family, regardless of who you are, regardless of whether you need to borrow, starts here, okay, when it comes to borrowing and paying for college. So long as you've completed a FAFSA, your student, right, assuming you're a class 2024 student, is going to be eligible to borrow up to $5,500 through the federal government freshman year. And then it goes up a little bit each year, a total of $27,000 that students are entitled to borrow so long as they complete the FAFSA, okay? So why do I recommend that everybody uses it? Well, number one, this is the only loan that students can qualify for without a cosigner, okay? They don't need established credit. Nobody else has to be attached to this in any capacity. They're guaranteed to get it so long as they go through the formalities to qualify. It's a relatively low fixed interest rate, 6.5%. Doesn't sound low, but relative to this year's landscape, believe it or not, it's at least competitive. Maybe low is not the right word. We can defer this loan, meaning we do not have to make any payments until 6 months after the student graduates. If they go on to grad school, we can defer it till after that. And there's a few other things like Peace Corps, Teach for America programs like this, where we can defer these loans further. if we qualified for any of the subsidized variation of this loan, which will be on your financial aid awards, that basically means that the federal government is picking up the interest while the students are in school. So we're borrowing at again, kind of with zero interest during that 4.5 year window. Now, and I've already seen some of you write in, hey, we have the first couple of years covered, so we don't need the federal direct student loan. Why would we take advantage of that? Couple of reasons. Number one, this is use it or lose it. If you don't use it freshman year, you don't get to borrow more a sophomore year, right? And kind of so on and so forth. Now, we work with a lot of families that are fortunate, have plenty of means. They don't need their students to borrow. Some of them want the kids to have skin in the game. That's great, and I actually applaud that philosophy. Others do not. So why am I still recommending that those families take advantage of this loan? I can take out this loan the student can take out this loan for $5,500. I, as a parent, can pay it back instantaneously and jump through those hoops each year. Guess what? Now my kid graduates with established credit. Okay. As a matter of fact, I met with a family the other week. They did this every year. So it was actually the reason for their phone call. Their kid graduated from college with like a 780 credit score or something like that, a very robust credit score as a 22-year-old to start their adult life and financial independence. So I need to be talked out of why it's not a good idea to leverage this program in some capacity. Okay, Peg. So hopefully I hammered that home. But so these are all the bullet points that I talked through, right? There's two, again, steps that the students need to complete. They're called loan entrance counseling and a promissory note on our YouTube channel. If you go to College Aid Pro's YouTube channel, and it's a good idea to subscribe to that if you haven't already, Peg actually walks you through these two steps, literally line through line. So just go ahead on our YouTube channel and she'll take you through that process again from A to Z and help you do it very quickly. So boom, you're done with that step. Okay, so that's the federal borrowing program for students, right? A lot of good features. Arguably one of the worst parts about that, if that's the right word, is that it's capped. There's a real limit as to what we can borrow there. There's no limit to what parents can borrow through the federal program called the PLUS loan, okay? And there's, like all options here, some pros and cons, but I'll kind of skip to specifically this year, which is probably the biggest con. You see the interest rate staring you in the face there. It's over 9%, plus an origination fee of 4.25%, right? So effectively, this is a 10% loan. So incredibly expensive way to borrow this year. And for most families, and again, this varies from year to year, but for most families this year, this is kind of a last resort. Because they are the easiest. You see that bullet point. They are the easiest lender to qualify to be eligible for. So, for example, if you have a very low credit score and you're having a tough time qualifying in the private student loan marketplace, or if you do qualify, the rates are really, really high. The PLUS loan could be the right solution for your family. Another reason the PLUS loan could be a good fit is that they do offer some forgiveness programs for those in the civil that work in the civil service at all. If you're a police officer, if you're a fireman, if you're a nurse, if you work at a college at a lot of nonprofits, you could be eligible for some forgiveness programs that are pretty good. At a minimum, we want you to do your homework, right? If I just mentioned a profession that you fall under that umbrella somewhere, it's worth doing your homework on the forgiveness programs. The big caveat that we flag up front is that you have to be employed under this qualifying, one of these qualifying programs for the entire length of the forgiveness program. The forgiveness program starts 6 months after the student graduates from college. So for 4.5 years from now. At that point, you'll go into repayment phase on this PLUS loan forgiveness program. And you have to make payments for 10 years. And after those 10 years, if there's still a balance on that loan, it can be forgiven. Okay. Now you're going to pay a tax at that time, but the takeaway there is that you have to be employed for the next 14.5 years, essentially, in that qualifying program in order for this forgiveness program to make sense. So there's an element of a gamble, for lack of a better word there, but we want you to do your homework because there are scenarios where it makes a lot of sense, and this is in fact the way for your family to go. Okay, Peggy, I think you can probably go to the next slide here. The other thing that I didn't mention there that is very, very important too, this loan is only in the parent's name. So if you want your kid attached to this loan in any capacity, it's going to be handshake agreement, right? If this loan doesn't get paid, nobody's going to be knocking on the student's door. Only the parent or parent's door is who's going to be responsible for paying that back. Now, we've had some families take advantage of the Parent Plus loan to have the student be responsible for paying some or all of it back. But again, that's completely informal arrangement with those families. And like Peg mentioned, in terms of actually the timeliness of being approved or denied for these plus loans, they're just about instantaneous. So that's I think for most families a nice perk. Okay, now I would say, in my opinion, the least kind of known state, or the least known loan programs are state loan programs. Okay, there's a decent amount of states across the country, around half, a little bit less than half, that have their programs that in most cases you can be eligible for if you are a resident of that state or your kid's going to school in that state. So for example, our neighbors to the north up there in Vermont, they have a program called VSAC. A lot of nice features about that state loan program, but you have to be a resident of Vermont, or your kid has to go to school at Middlebury or St. Mike's or UVM, right? One of the colleges in Vermont if you want to be eligible. There's three exceptions, right? There's three exceptions in the state. Three exceptions in the country: Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and of all places, Iowa. These three states, anybody is eligible to borrow through these programs, regardless of where your kid goes to college, regardless of where you're a resident, right? So you could be a resident of California, your kid could go to school at UC Boulder, and you can borrow through Iowa or Rhode Island, right? And so it's just something that we'd like to flag that, in our opinion, not a lot of people are aware that these are even options, on the decision tree. They all have better rates than the Plus program, okay? Most of them are fixed. Both the parent and the student are attached to these loans. So for families where it's important to have the kid have at least some type of formal obligation to this note, we're going to be able to check that box. And again, you have some variations from state to state, but we just like to at least make you aware that your state may have an option. And then regardless of where you live, certainly you want to poke around for these other three states. And by the way, guys, I'm going to share a landing page with everybody. And I'll just grab it and put it in the chat now, and then I'll share it again later, that, all of these loan programs we're talking about, including these state options and the federal options, are all hyperlinked with some kind of notes on each. And I just put that in the chat, and everybody's going to get it in the follow-up as well. Okay, Peg. Okay, so the private student loan marketplace. Now, this is something that is, I think for most of us, is what we think of like for the traditional loans, right? The Sallie Mae's of the world that you've heard of, that have been around for quite some time, and maybe something that you leveraged back when you went to college. And again, this is what again we think of as our traditional loans, where the student is borrowing here, and the parent or aunt, grandparent, whoever it happens to be, is really the co-signer. And this is usually generally something that we think of as the students, again, ultimately responsibility, and the parent, we're just kind of borrowing their credit score, right? This year, I would say, at least in recent memory, private student loans have been the most competitive compared to other options out there, especially with, where we're starting at the federal level with the Plus loans at effectively 10%. Somewhere in this marketplace has been the best fit for a decent amount of families, at least year to date. And I'm going to go through some specifics with a few lenders in just a second here, but a couple things to talk about. A lot of these lenders initially, what they're going to show front and center is a variable interest rate, right? A variable introductory interest rate, whereas the federal government, the state programs, just about all of them are fixed everybody qualifies for the same rate. If you're approved for a federal or state program, we know we're going to get this rate and these repayment terms. The private student loan marketplace is different, and the rate and repayment terms that you're going to get is ultimately going to be based on the strength or lack thereof of the application. The other thing that we talked about, and again, I'll show in a second here, we want to leverage these guys against one another. This is a huge business, right? These are banks, this is Wall Street that compete for your business. Same thing we do with colleges, leverage them against one another so you can ultimately save money. And again, I'm going to walk you through how to do that in just a second here. And there's no origination fee, with very few exceptions, no origination fees in the private student loan marketplace. And Peggy, even though, let me just share my screen for 1 second while we're on that topic, and I know we're going to do it again as we wrap here, but I want to quickly kind of just take you through these steps, because the first thing that we're recommending, and if you could share this in the chat again, Peg, the first thing that we're recommending this year, we want you to know what your lowest rate is going to be in the private student loan marketplace. And then we have that to compare to our state options, to the federal option, and then Peg's going to quickly talk through our less traditional ways to potentially borrow for college. So what we recommend is at least do 2, 3, something like that. Apply for 2 or 3 of these. College Ave. Oh, sorry, I think I went to the wrong link here. So College Ave and SoFi, these are a couple of, just take a couple of minutes. They're soft credit pulls, so you can get an idea of what these rates are. Okay, Credit Union Select. This is probably one you never heard of. I had never heard of it. And this is something that is interesting, in my opinion, about the private student loan marketplace. These guys change every day, certainly every week. So as some lenders are falling behind in the given season, they're going to do what they can to be more competitive. Guess what? We benefit as consumers. So right now, Credit Union Select has the lowest introductory rate, 3.9%, right? Less than half of or more than half of the federal program. Doesn't mean everybody qualifies for that. It depends on the strength of your application. But we want to apply for a couple of these. And then what we recommend, take your lowest rate of those. Then we go to Earnest, because you see Earnest here, they're going to match any competitor's rate. And I would encourage you to take it one step further, right? If you get 3.9% from Credit Union Select, take that to Earnest and say, can you do better than this, right? Again, they want your business. That's their big way that they're competing this year. So the first thing that we want to do is follow these steps. So here's the lowest rate my family will qualify for in the private student loan marketplace. Then I want to compare that to the state and the federal government. So we'll revisit that later when we kind of bring it all together at the end. But I wanted to show you that.
Yeah, and people ask, which is a great question, is my credit going to get pinged? Yeah, most of them, except for Sallie Mae, it's going to be a soft ping. So soft pings will affect your credit. It's going to be temporary, and it shouldn't be hugely significant. Just like everything in life, you look at this, if you can get that best rate and then even get Earnest to go down a tick, the thousands and thousands of dollars you could save in loans over 4 years for your child probably way outweighs a momentary slight tick down in your credit score. We're not credit score specialists. We don't work for Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, so I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but just keep that in mind. It's just kind of risk reward sort of look at that. But Sallie Mae is the one from what we've been able to research that does a hard ping. And if you do have your credit frozen, like I personally do, you're going to need to do a temporary unfreeze, which is not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. And it's actually free now. Okay, so let me touch on a few things. Somebody asked about this in the Q&A right at the beginning. Am I going to talk about HELOCs? And yes, we are. Some people are sitting on a significant amount of home equity. And so it is an option here. With the high interest rate environment, it's not what it used to be. Several years ago, Matt and I were meeting with families, and it was a no-brainer because people were sitting on high interest mortgages. I'm like, you need to do a cash out refi. Your principal and interest payment will go down. You can take a chunk out for college, yada, yada. So it was great for their overall financial health of their family, as well as for college. It's a little bit different now, right? Powell, the head of the Fed, keeps talking about, maybe in September we'll see a tick down. But as we all know, interest rates are relatively high right now. So whenever you make any of these decisions, you got to look at your overall financial health, taxes, and everything. So if you have an existing HELOC, or you can always apply for one and just see what the bank will do for you. It's almost always variable. So as rates go down, if they do later this year and into next year, that's a positive. So it could be an option for your family. But as Matt was saying, do the other piece on that other side and see. You could get a much lower interest rate potentially, and the private loan is the way for your family to go, or the state loan, however it works out. But this piece, not as great across the board for people because of the interest rate environment that we're in right now. But it's always on the table as an option. Somebody wrote in about, we have really nice 401ks. So kudos to you for being good savers. I wrote back and said, we need to talk to you one-on-one to really give advice. And you just want to be really careful, because you are literally pulling money out of retirement accounts to pay for college. So you need to make sure that's not going to hurt you. You're 70, 80, you're blessed enough to be alive at 90, whatever. Also, there are ramifications for financial aid if you're pulling that money out. And is that going to hurt you if you're getting money from the colleges? So again, can't make decisions in a silo. Look at all of the moving pieces. We can help with that. But it is an option on the table if your plan even allows it. Your plan might not even allow loans. So it's not even something that you can look at, and you have to look at the interest rates and everything. That's not a uniform thing. It's set up by the plan that your employer is providing you. And then life insurance. So you might have some life insurance currently that you can borrow against. Just like I'm talking about with the 401k, very nuanced to each family. So that might be something that makes sense for you to do. Just be very wary if you have insurance agents coming to you and saying, hey, you should put this big chunk of money over here because you can borrow against it to pay for college. You need to understand the vehicles. These are investment vehicles, cash value life insurance. You need to understand them. You need to understand the fees. You need to understand how much you have to put in, and what if the market has a downturn? How does that affect everything? So if you have a financial advisor or somebody, a trusted resource to go to that can say, yeah, this makes sense for you, or no, it doesn't, from the standpoint of just the life insurance policy. But if you have one and that's been part of your strategy, then it could be a good place to supplement some delta that you have in here. But you should look at that compared to the loans. Just like I've been saying, we've been saying this whole webinar, like, does that make sense compared to the loans? All right, turn it back to you, Matt.
Yeah, great questions here, guys. Keep them coming. And again, unfortunately, we won't be able to get to all of them, but I'm going to talk in just a few minutes of how we can still help you beyond this afternoon or this morning, depending where you're at. So I want to take a couple minutes and the get for this slide, and a big, I think, theme of the presentation today is kind of to help you all define your borrowing criteria, which is that I talked about at the beginning, which is going to help inform what loan or combination of loans make the most sense for your family, for those of you that do have to borrow, right? And these are questions that you should be asking yourselves starting now, right? Everybody thinks about the rate first, as they should. Makes a ton of sense. That's the cost. That's how much we're paying, right? That's the bottom line here. But I want you to take, how much does the rate of the loan matter compared to some other things, right? So for example, who should be on this loan and for how long, okay? And here's what I mean by that specifically. If you consider this to be the student's responsibility, or at least some of the student's responsibility, we cannot consider the plus loan. That's off, and you want them to be formally attached to the loan, I should say. That's off the table, okay? So that's immediately kind of getting rid of one of the options in our in our decision tree. When I say how long do we want, whether it's the parent or the student or both, to be attached to this loan, a lot of these programs, some of the states have them. I think just about all, I can't speak to the entire private student loan marketplace, but most of the private student loan marketplace has what are called co-sign and release programs. And some of them are more aggressive than others. And what that means is that essentially right now, like I mentioned, anything above this $5,500, somebody, presumably parent or parents, are going to have to be a co-signer. Now, there's a decent amount of families that we work with that say, look, I'm going to help my kids the best I can, but we only have so much means. We got to put 3 kids through college. Ultimately, I need them to be assume most of the burden here. And I'd like to be off of those loans as quickly as possible. So some of these lenders, in the private student loan marketplace, have 12-month co-signer release programs. And what that means is once we go into repayment after graduation, after 12 months, the student, okay, or that time the young adult can apply to be on that loan themselves and have the parent or whomever co-signed be released to that, and now it's just their responsibility. So that for some families, that part doesn't matter at all, right? The parents don't care if they're on it for all of it, right? But these are some of the things that we want to think about, because it's going to inform what options are even what we can even consider, right, as a family. Number 3 and number 4, they really go together here. I'm saying kind of one and the same thing. How much do we value consumer protection and flexibility? Said another way, would I pay more, or pay a premium for a loan if I had some type of quote unquote insurance? And again, insurance, consumer protection, flexibility, I kind of put all in the same category. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say that I'm somebody that has a very precarious job. I'm self-employed. I'm just starting a business. This could go anywhere. Okay. Up, down, sideways, whatever. And I'm really nervous about, committing to a certain repayment plan. Well, the federal government, one thing that, and I don't think I said this at the top, they're the best, I would say, in terms of flexibility, in terms of repayment options, in terms of we have a God forbid type of scenario. They're going to work with us in a way that not necessarily all lenders are. Okay. So if I'm somebody that maybe I'm in sales or I'm just really worried about, my ability to be consistent in the future, I might say, you know what, even if I can get a lower interest rate, I might pay more for that flexibility. Right now, again, I'm probably talking to the minority of you folks, but I think, again, as you're thinking about this, I think that's worth just being on there, because again, for some folks, they're going to consciously choose a higher interest rate for those reasons that I just mentioned. And then the last one, we still have it on there, even though it's probably been 2 years since we've recommended to somebody that, or over 2 years. I haven't recommended it to anybody this year to take advantage of home equity. But historically, right, 3 years ago for the class 2021, it was the best bet for tons of folks that had equity in their home, had access to a relatively low interest rate, and were philosophically open to it. So these are just the things that we want you guys to be thinking about and talking about right now. And I see some questions here. Can somebody call me? I'll also talk about that right now as well. I think that was our last slide, wasn't it, Peggy? Yeah. So a couple of things here as we kind of wrap, and again, we'll do our best with questions, and I want to make sure that I hopefully tie this all together here. So here's what I'm going to recommend for everybody. Okay. And this is for those of you that follow along with us. We always give a deal to those folks that show up live with us, especially in the middle of the summer, middle of July on a beautiful day, at least here in the Northeast, albeit a little bit too hot. Book an hour with one of us. Okay. Book an hour today. You get 20% off. Use coupon code TWOS20. And again, through this link, you can click on the Get Started button. There's a few things that we'll do in this hour. The very first thing that and again, guys, it doesn't matter who you meet with on our team. Go to our experts page on our website. You can meet with the director of financial aid at Harvard, MIT, the former director at USC, director of scholarships at University of Oklahoma, certified financial planners that have been doing this forever and have a niche focus in college. First thing that we want to do is we want to look at your offers that you got from your colleges, and we want to stare at your FAFSA and CSS profile, because we are still successfully appealing for more money to colleges for the class 2024. One advantage to this whole FAFSA mess this year is that colleges are still scrambling. Again, we're benefiting as consumers. Okay, so this is happening this week, that we are going back to colleges and getting better deals that we signed in May, or sorry, in April before May 1st. So we want to see that when we, Peg, and probably we should have had a slide up there, but we talked at the very beginning, Peg talked about, here's some things that you can do to reduce the amount you have to borrow. We want to look at the award and see if we can help you get a better deal from these colleges. And then we can help you figure out what is the best way to borrow, right? If you're somebody that really hates doing these applications, literally in this hour, we can rip through these things in 2 seconds and do these applications together. We can help you do the master promissory note and the entrance counseling for that $5,500 together. But then ultimately we want to say, hey, here's when to use your 529. Here's how and when to use savings. Leave the 401k on the sidelines, right? And look, this is a big decision. Okay, so you pay $279, right? After the discount, and we're gonna make sure that you nail this. Okay, and these are just a few things that we can do in this hour. You got to book it today to get the 20% off. So don't overthink this one. And what we want you to do, and again, unless you're someone that's just like totally spooked by applications and that's how you want to use the hour, at least go apply for a couple of these, okay, before your meeting. Do these today, right? You're here, you've dedicated some time to this, just do these right now, okay? So that when you show up to that meeting with whichever expert you meet with, we know right away, boom, here's our lowest rate or couple of rates in the private student loan marketplace. And then we're going to compare those to Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Iowa, or whatever state you live in or your kid goes to school in, and obviously have the compare those to the Federal Plus loan, right? Does it make sense if you're eligible for the forgiveness program to take a close look there? But this is something that, again, is a less sexy part of the process, but it's on average, a 1% difference in your interest rate can translate to about a $30,000 swing in how much you end up paying back for college. Now, obviously that's an average, but that statistic always burns a hole in my brain here that depending where I go, we could be talking about tens of thousands of dollars. So we just want to help you get this right. And this is the best way that we can do that. A lot of you had some great questions in terms of when and how do you deploy your resources. Should we use my 401k? We can't give firm financial advice, right, in kind of this one-to-many setting. That's why we have this opportunity for an hour one-on-one where we can get all these details and give you a firm recommendation that we can stand behind. And again, make sure that we're helping you get that right. What did I miss, Peggy?
Nothing. I put the page in because people are writing in, how do I get to these loans? It's all right here. Good. Click on it in the chat. It's the last chat entry. Bookmark it. And as Matt said, just go through and start applying to some of these. And it is hugely, I mean, as he said, unless you really you don't want to do it until you talk to one of us, fine. But time is not on your side now. School's going to start before you know it. So if you want to book the meeting, get it booked as soon as possible. You can pick next available. If you're in our software, you can pick next available when you book the meeting. Or as Matt said, you can go to collegeaidpro.com, scroll down, and you can see all of our experts. There's a picture, there's a video, and you can pay and actually, oh, I got to make sure. I don't know for sure if that coupon code works on the website, Matt. So I have to check with Jara on that. But yeah, as Matt's showing you, if you have your MyCap account already, just hit talk to an expert in the corner like he's showing you. Put in that coupon code where it says apply coupon code, and then you'll be able to pick next available, or if you know somebody, because you've already met with them, pick them. You'll see their calendar. And if that doesn't work for you, go back. They're all of our experts have been around for years and years, and they're totally capable to help you with this step of the process. So,
And if you're on the free version of our platform, this CTA, this button here, as opposed to talk to an expert, will say upgrade. So you hit upgrade, you hit software plus expert, put in your coupon code and book your time. And yeah, we'll make sure folks can do it on the through the website as well. So and then as always, guys, write into support@collegeaidpro.com. Go on our YouTube, we had a great team that will get you pointed in the right direction. They're not going to be able to answer kind of your granular questions, but if you're having any trouble just booking your hour or anything like that, write into support. Go on our YouTube channel, join our Facebook group, because we have our experts moderating that as well, and just a really engaged group there. So even if you're not going or to book an hour, just continue to pay attention with what we're doing. We're going to do a version of this at the end of the month, 2 weeks from now. And again, these lenders, they're every single week, and things change, right? And we got a pulse of that every day, and we share that with you all to say, hey, here's what we see as the best options at the moment.
Yeah, it's really a good analogy to the colleges. It depends on how they're doing. So take advantage of that. That's a card you can play, and it might end up being what is it, a royal flush? I don't play all
Hey, well, look at
I'd
you.
end up being a royal flush for you.
You're slick. You're slick. All right, well, this was
Yeah, and as Matt said, there's awesome questions in the Q&A. We're not ignoring you. We can't answer them. They're very good, but they're very specific to your family, many of them, and we would be negligent to answer them without knowing more about your family. And that's where that hour could give you a lot of peace of mind, sleep factor, and also just get you catapulted where you need to be, right? Which will help with your stress level and just keep moving everything forward. So we're happy to step in and support. That's what we're here for.
And you know what? We should have mentioned at the top, congratulations, everybody. I don't think we did that
Yeah,
today.
yeah,
Let's not bury the lead. Your kids got into college. They're going to college. You did your job. And this is kind of, one of the last steps here. So
yeah, it's the tail end. And as I said at the beginning, you're going to be waving goodbye before you know it. So enjoy the time with your kids before they start that next chapter. And, this is just another step in the journey. So.
bye, guys.
All right, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye.